The wheel of time turns, and ages come and go, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose in the mountains of mist. The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. The Wheel of Time turns and podcasts come and go. Welcome to Wattcast, a Wheel of Time book and watch club. We are reading through Robert Jordan's epic fantasy series and watching Amazon's Wheel of Time TV show. I'm Caleb Wimble, and with me today is Keeley Frank.
Hello.
And it's probably just going to be the two of us today. We're just going to have our own duo discussion. Maybe Nick will be joining us, but I think it's probably just going to be us due to conflict schedules. Email us questions, comments, and corrections via contact@wattcast.net. The subject line questions, we'll answer them here on the show. But today we're just going to get right into it. For those unfamiliar, The Wheel of Time is an epic fantasy series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. We've read through the first book, Eye of the World. We've watched the first season of Amazon's TV adaptation. Today we're digging into book 2 of the series, The Great Hunt, chapters 36 to 40. So what happens in these chapters? We left off with the party finally reunited, and they travel to the Ogier steading near Carrienne in order to use the ways there. And after some discussion with the elders, they get permission to use the ways. They try to go in them, and Machin Shin, the Black Wind, is there again. It's waiting again. So this was all kind of pointless, but they decide to use a portal stone, and they find that there is one available. Things don't go well when Rand tries to use it because he's the only one who can. Verin is not able to use the stone she informs them. Everybody experiences like these flickering thousands of alternate lives that they just live through in sequence. Kind of a horrifying experience of just dying repeatedly, Dark One laughing at the end of each one. And then they arrive in Tome and Head out of these otherworld lives. But it's 4 months later than when they went into the stone, so they lost time instead of gained it. Meanwhile, at the White Tower, our favorite Red Sedai, Liandrin, tells Egwene and Nynaeve that Rand is in danger along with their other friends, gets them to meet her in the Grove for a journey. Elayne and Min overhear and come along, so they're all going together. They go through the ways. Wouldn't you know it, it is a trap. Turns out Liandrin is evil. What? And led them really horrifically into slavery by the Shanchan, who are like waiting with an army outside the Waygate when they arrive. So Egwene, Nynaeve, Min, and Elayne, immediately there's a melee, and Nynaeve and Elayne escape into the woods because Nynaeve's like throwing out lightning storms and like tornadoes and shit, fighting with the Shanchan, while Egwene gets collared by a Suldam named Rena, who tells Egwene that she is now Damane, which is a slave, Aes Sedai, essentially a slave channeler, and that she can only channel when giving permission, that she is like tortured into submission, and then assents to go along in exchange for saving Min's life, who they are about to kill. And that brings us pretty much up to date. So once again, so much going on in these chapters. It felt like a very brief respite at the Ogier steading before getting right back into what now feels for me typical Great Hunt, like crazy things going on. So Keeley, what were the big highlights for you out of these?
Yeah, I think the giant one was definitely Liandrin. Which, so when she is just referring to like the master, or we're just assuming that that's supposed to be like the Dark One.
I think so. Yeah, that's the Egwene. I think she has like an image of Baal Zaman from her dreams when she thinks about it. So that's exactly where I went to.
Okay. Because this, assuming that that's what it is, I am pretty positive that that's what they're going for. That's something that I accidentally spoiled myself on. That Liandrin is actually. Yeah, I don't remember. It was back when we were watching season 1. I was Googling something, and I don't remember what I was Googling. And it was like, oh, by the way, Liandrin's evil. And I was like, well, fuck. So I've just been like waiting for that to come up. So I was like, oh, bummer, she's evil. But so I'm like really confused about Rand, the group that he's with, because he's channeling to use the stones, right?
Yeah.
So everyone around him has to know that he can channel, right?
No, I don't think so. It's only, well, his friends know, and Verin knows, and she kind of takes him aside, and Verin's giving him cover because she's pretending like she's the one who knows all about waystones and everything. And when everybody else is listening, she's like, Rand, come over and help me. You've been through a waystone much more recently than I, which she then reveals to him in private, like, I've never been through one at all. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting confused on. I was like, wait, are they assuming that she's actually the one doing it? Otherwise, they all would have to know that Rand is the one doing it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not even sure that they know that you need to be able to channel to use one.
Okay.
That part is not clear to me in memory, but yeah, I do think Verin's giving as much cover for Rand as she can through all this pretty cleverly for the most part.
Yeah, and it's also kind of, I'm just having like a hard time visualizing like the setting. So like, because they always have these conversations like next to each other. I'm like, well, how far away is everyone else unless they're whispering? And like, if these two were always like talking to each other, I feel like that would make me suspicious if I was also in the group. But maybe everyone else is just kind of happy to not ask questions. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, and I don't know how much is also the mystique that they're attaching to Lord Rand at this point too. Like Hurin sort of just even knowing that he's a shepherd and everything is still like extremely loyal and thinks Rand has it all figured out. And they're all we know that the Shionarans, they have like so much reverence and respect for the Aes Sedai, like more than anybody we've met. So I don't think they're very suspicious of Verin. The closest is I think Ingtar is like getting antsier and antsier about getting the horn all the time. Again, the thing feels like a Boromir routine to me that he's doing. But even he seems he bristles against being slowed down, but still seems to trust Verin's authority pretty implicitly, I think. So when she calls Rand over, apart from the others, to the stone, I think they're all willing to just assume that there's nothing to worry about going on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense, kind of thinking about it now, but definitely in the moment, it just like, how many times does Rand have to experience something, or it just feels like it doesn't make sense that everyone's not noticing that something is happening. But I guess just because there's not, dialogue saying that they're noticing, it doesn't mean that they're not, because who knows what's going to happen.
My impression when they go into the stone is that it just kind of happens to everyone at the same time, and I think they're all experiencing the exact same thing, like every other possible permutation of their life, or at least like the 1,000 or so nearest possible permutations, where like a single decision changed the entire course of their life. So at least from that point on, I don't think they're even thinking about Rand as doing something specifically within. Although, what's interesting about that is, in a lot of them, Rand is like channeling and shit in the ones that he experiences, and there's all those things going on. And Matt sort of talks about, like, he's sort of like, I'm sorry, I would never have done that, like implying that he like betrays Rand and sells him out and gets him killed or something in some of them. So I'm wondering, wait, in all these other lives playing out, is that a chance for everybody else who goes through the stone to see what Rand's deal is? Like, you would think at some point with Rand having these powers, and he becomes like a false dragon in some of them, or he becomes eaten away by the power in some of them, or even like serving Queen Morghese and channeling to fight the armies of Shan-Chan that are coming in. So yeah, I wonder what they witnessed in any of those, and whether they even know. I don't know if they know that these are alternate lives either. Like, we didn't spend a whole lot of time with the rest of this group before jumping over to the White Tower, it felt like.
Right, and I couldn't tell, like, it felt almost like what Nynaeve had to go through, where she had to go through and like saw these potential lives. It felt kind of like that, but then I also wasn't sure what we're really supposed to think is happening, because it keeps ending as if the Balsamon is messing with Rand the whole time, because he just keeps saying over and over, like, I can kill you, the lose there, and then flicker, and then he's like seeing it again. So I wasn't sure if we're supposed to be looking at potentially alternate timelines, like different decisions, or if this is just like something that Balsamon is doing. Like, that part of it was kind of weird.
I think it's the former, because we had, at least as far as we know from the first time they went through, like, they characterized these as worlds that might be, or worlds that might have been already. And the way that Verin describes them, I'm really sold on this is a multiverse. And I think that that fits with Balsamon every time being like, I win again, lose there, and I win. Like, and he's always taunting Rand about the fact that they have done this so many times before, and he has won every time, he believes, from his perspective. And I think in the eye of the world, I thought that was just in the past of this world, because it's like this cycle going on of reincarnation, and he's fought all these different versions of Rowland Darkspade, Lose there, and dragons reborn over time. But now I'm sort of thinking, as of the Great Hunt, that he also means like in all these other realities, because he seems aware of all of them at the same time. Like I feel like the Dark One, this whole thing is being able to step outside time and space. He is from outside time and space and wants to get into it to destroy the Wheel of Time. And I get the sense, whether I'm not 100% sure about this, but I get the sense that he is sort of one almost everywhere, like across the multiverse. And this is like the one of the only remaining realities where he hasn't succeeded yet. And this is like we're witnessing the world where things might go right, or it's like the one last chance for things to go correctly. Which I know that there's other stories that have done this famously. So I wish the one that wasn't coming to mind was Avengers of Infinity War with the Doctor Strange plan for this to be, this is the one possible timeline where it beat Thanos kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because we just watched it again, Men in Black 3 with, is it
Oh, yeah.
Griff, I think, that he's like, well, this guy's going to come through the door unless this is the timeline where this happens, unless this is the timeline. So it's definitely something that's been done a lot. But I guess, okay, so I was thinking more that it was, instead of it necessarily being like a past or like alternate timeline of where Balsamon is saying like, I wouldn't again lose there, I was thinking that it's more of he was like waiting and like currently saying like, I win again, just over and over, not necessarily as like, we're just hearing him say it in all of these different timelines, if that makes sense.
It could be, yeah. I was kind of thinking it was both, because I think of the Dark One as a timeless being who, so for him, like all these things are taking place simultaneously, kind of regardless. And so I think he is taunting Rand in the present. That's how I sort of thought about it, but that Rand is experiencing all these things that for the Dark One, and maybe that's kind of how Rand's experience is going. He is sort of experiencing time here in cyclical linear fashions, but that they're all the same for the Dark. I'm not confident about any of this. So it could just be entirely that, like you said, that these are just visions that he is giving to Rand, that he was sort of waiting for Rand to use the Waystone in the way that Machin Shin is waiting for them to come through the Waygate. That could be too. I don't think it's not very explicit here. I'm just inferring a lot from what we do get.
Right. And have they explained why or how Machin Shin got put into the ways?
The story that we got from Moraine and from Loyal was that it's sort of born of the taint on Sayadine, because the male channelers created these as so when the male channelers were all going crazy and destroying the world, a bunch of them hid out on Ogier steadings because that stopped the corruption for a while. And so as a gift to the Ogier of gratitude for letting them stay there so long, eventually they had to leave because they would die being cut off from the One Power. But they created these waygates to give the Ogier access between all the steadings, because the world has been destroyed and there's no safe way to travel anywhere. But because they were corrupted, like touching the corrupted One Power, this huge thing that they did got the corruption sort of evolved over time into a kind of sentient being. It's like it sort of seems like it's made of the souls in some ways of the corrupted channelers who created the ways, and then also the people that it's devoured over time in the ways along with it. So it's like this hungering mass of pure evil, I guess, is the way I see it. And when we learn, we meet an Ogier who has lost his soul and mind to Machin Shin in the steading, and it's just like an empty husk of a person at this point, like a walking corpse. I don't know. I don't know if the show's version is compatible or not, if it's the same thing, they're showing it in a different way, because the show, like we talked about, like shows Machin Shin as the sort of force that shows you your darkest inner self. And I don't know if it actually devours anything. So that's kind of my impression of the versions too.
Okay, because I guess I'm just having kind of like a hard time at deciphering between how the two, like the ways and the portal stones kind of work, because I originally thought that like, the ways is something that like you can physically travel through. It's not just kind of like in the blink of an eye, where it felt like that was what the portal stones were until this point, where they all saw something and then it ends up taking 4 months. So I guess I assume that at a different point in one of the books it will explain more about the portals. But I guess, I'm just like, because then I was like, well, why isn't Machin Shin then attached to the portals if it could be attached to the way gates? But the way gates were created through the steadings. So.
Yeah, well, and the portals, we think, were created even before the Age of Legends. They were created by some even older civilization pre-Aes Sedai, and the Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends sort of tried to figure them out as best they could. So yeah, we've got so many different other worlds and mystical artifacts from ancient times that but you're right, there will be a grand unifying portal theory given at at a later point in the books that will answer some of these.
Okay, cool. And it's like, as neat as it is to come across all of these like artifacts and just like cool shit that was created in the Age of Legends, it also kind of is meaningless at this point, because so many of them are being found that they're like, oh, this was created in the Age of Legends, and we don't know. It's like, okay, well, so was fucking everything else at this point, and I don't know what any of it means. So I guess it's all supposed to, I guess it's all supposed to signify that, like, the final battle is coming and this age is going to end and all of that. But some of it is just kind of getting lost on me at this point because of how much is like supposed to be unique or special. It's like, well, it can't all fucking be special.
That's a good point. I feel like it's easy for like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign to run into that problem too, where if there's too many magic items and artifacts and otherworldly powers and factions involved, that happens all the time. I feel like at the table, at some point, it just becomes like too many to keep track of.
Yeah, because then, like, well, in like very similar way, then it's like, well, what am I supposed to care about? Like, I can't care equally about all of these things and want to learn the lore for all of these things. You need to narrow it down. It's like, pick out your one ring. We will worry about that. Everything else is kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, and it's totally different too coming to it as an adult, because again, when I was reading these as a kid, like I just devoured I would read every book I could get my hands on. We lived kind of at the time like out in the middle of nowhere, like fishing town and asparagus farming country. We lived mile and a half, 2 miles outside a town of 1,800 people. All our neighbors were asparagus farmers. So the collection of books that were there were very limited, and it was whatever I could get my hands on. And then sometimes we would, a couple times a year, drive up to Bangkok, and I would buy whatever I could afford at the bookstores, the English bookstores up there. So I would pour through like the Wheel of Time stuff, the Redwall stuff, whatever. I would obsess over the lore. And when I caught up with the series, I'd be waiting a year or two for the next book and just really, getting online on early dial-up and obsessing on forums and figuring out what all the plot threads are, who all these connections are. And now, I don't have the time for that in the same way. I'm not usually. I'm feeling a similar level of overwhelm with Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive on the books are growing exponentially, or not logarithmically in size. Like they're kind of doubling in size actually, each book in that series. And I the fourth one came out in September or something, and I opened it and I'm like, oh God, I can't do 1,600 pages right now, or whatever it was. There's so much going on in that world, so many things, and I just it is exhausting, still rewarding in ways that it was as a kid. But when you don't have that seemingly infinite childhood time, it's a different to stories like this for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are kind of experiencing that. Like anyone that reads or plays video games or watches movies or whatever, it's kind of like there's gonna end up being like a psychological term at some point called like fantasy fatigue, where there's too many of like kind of the same tropes, the same stereotypes, but then randomly unique magic systems. And it's like, I can't keep track of the magic systems and, these specific characters from all these different universes. Because like, I think I'm in the middle of like 30 different series, and I have like 70 first books in other series, and I get stuck in them. Especially like I read the first and the Mistborn books years ago, and then since then I've owned his books, but I've always been kind of overwhelmed to get into them. So it's like, I can dive into, a 600-700 page fantasy right now to read these books, but I can't really do that with any other series because then I'm gonna start like conflating characters, and it's neat and I appreciate that it's out there, but it's also a lot all the time.
Yeah, I remember hearing people talk similarly about the later Dark Tower books growing up. That's one I still haven't read through. But yeah, the big Stephen King fans talking about, even for the biggest ones, the degree to which the world exploded to such an extent at some point that it became an almost overwhelming universe building project. How do you feel about, so Rand's party is kind of in a lot going on, whirlwind of literal worlds and states here. How are you feeling about the other group, the White Tower crew, and what we're getting into here? Because I could tell you, I'm getting memories back of the first time reading this. I think it's a good plot turn. It's interesting. It's exciting, but oh my God, is it maddening the extent of Liandrin's sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Yeah, like as soon as she said like, oh, we're going wherever, I wrote down like, well, that's a fucking trap. Like there's no way that she would just randomly be like, this is helpful.
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, like don't. Okay, well, the field that I work in is fraud, and that's one of the main things that scammers tell people is like, don't tell anyone that this is happening. I was like, okay, that's a fucking red flag. I'm telling everyone. And so I was then thinking, like, I haven't yet, but I wanted to go back and see exactly what Liandrin was saying to them, because she can't outright lie, but they definitely, I think the dialogue with her is really, like, creative in that that she's doing something, but you don't know exactly what she's doing. So, like, you buy whatever she's saying. So I think, like, she only says, like, your friends are in trouble or something, which is true, but they take it as, like, oh, well, we need to go actually help them right now. So.
And she refuses to elaborate really quickly. She's like, no more of your foolish questions while I answer, after like the second or third attempt to pin it down.
And then, so I'm not entirely buying kind of the dynamics of the four at this point. Like, Egwene and Nynaeve obviously are like frenzies, and then Min is also in there, and kind of Elayne, but their friendship I think grew really, really fast.
Yeah, especially Elayne.
Yeah, and so for them to randomly be like, well, we're going with, it's like, but you did that the first book when this all got started, and like, how did that fucking work out for you? So, and I mean, obviously, like, she can't, Liandrin, I guess, could have outright killed them. I did notice, she did specifically say that, like, I had plans or something to take care of your friends.
Yeah, to take care of you.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, obviously she was gonna fucking murder you guys. So them going with was kind of like, okay, like, it felt kind of convenient just to keep the group together, instead of me really buying that, like, oh, well, they would have been listening through this hole in the wall and then forcing themselves to go with.
Yeah, it's actually, I didn't remember how quickly they left the White Tower, and we don't get to see any of the lessons or anything firsthand. We hear like very brief snippets of like their lectures and classes and the many months of discipline and the Sheriam, Mistress of Novices, but we're just kind of told all that happens and that they get close to each other. And I really somehow filled in gaps of all this being there. Now I kind of want to see it. Like I would have enjoyed, I think, a little more time spent for sure, at least building those relationships and maybe seeing more of the experience of learning. Maybe we get some of that more in later books. I don't remember. Maybe that's next book. I'm thinking, but I thought we had more of the sort of, Wizard Academy thing going on, but we're really just skipping right past all of it here. It's like we're told that happened and we got close, we bonded, and now we're being whisked off on a really horrible misadventure here. And yeah, I don't really buy Elayne's characterization yet either. I think Min, I'm on board. Min tracks to me for whatever reason, and maybe it's the convenience of her having this ability to always sort of know things that other people don't know and having these prophetic attachments. And we get the sense that she's somebody who kind of knows everybody's fate and her own, but knows that there are ways to change bits of it, and she puts herself into certain positions to avoid other fates. But her personality also comes across more strongly to me. And Elayne at this point, I don't know either. I don't feel like I really have a good handle on who she is yet, besides plucky princess who wants to have adventures, and even that is really thinly sketched. We haven't gotten anything from her perspective and haven't really seen her interacting with other people much.
Yeah, and the few couple sentences that she does have with Nynaeve when they realize that they both escaped, it just keeps kind of going back to like, well, what will my mom think? What will the queen think? And it's like,
Yeah.
again, it's just, she's reading so young. I don't know how old she's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be, but this just feels like a character that it's like you're literally like fucking escaping from people trying to enslave and murder you, and she's like, what will my mom think? It's like,
Yeah.
oh my god, so that was kind of frustrating. I did just go back and I was looking to see what Liandrin said, and she's very vague. She just says that, like,
Oh yeah.
she's like, did you know that Moraine wrote letters to the White Tower about you? And then,
Yeah.
that, like, your friends are in trouble. Don't you want to help them? And so she does keep it very vague. Like, she doesn't really
Yes.
say anything. So it's like, I hate that. I hate that it's, like, so sneaky about, like, what they say and they don't say.
So sneaky that, like, even knowing already from having read the books before that she was Black Aja, I still thought she lied to them directly in this passage as she's saying that stuff when I first read it, and I had to go back to see. Oh no, really? Like, I thought she said that, like, Moraine, that, oh, Moraine tasked me with with helping you all or something. But no, it's like you said, she just says, like, she doesn't connect any of the dots. She's like, Moraine wrote to the White Tower. Well, what does that mean? You stole some of her letters to Swan or something,
Yeah.
and your friends are in charge. Yeah, it is so serpentine and getting us into not lying. Although there is the open question of, in order to be, if she is Black Aja, and serves Balsamon, how, like, that itself is against the three oaths. That itself,
Right.
like, which Egwene, or no, not Egwene, which Elayne brings up. Like, how is this possible? Like, seemingly violates the three oaths, and Nynaeve's not sure, and she's like, well, I don't know, and maybe she didn't outright lie, and and she has the same sort of thought process that we did of, like, trying to go back through her words in her mind. Did she lie outright at any point? She never. The technicality. I never said I wouldn't enslave you in the course of this possible roundabout way for helping your friends, from my perspective of saving Rand's life. And maybe it is saving Rand's life because this is part of the plan to bring him over to the Dark One or whatever.
Yeah, and I was wondering because, like, in every other Waygate, there's been Machin Shin, and that's why they had to use the Portal Stone. But then when she opens the Waygate, it's not there.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think that, like, plays into more of, like, well, it's, the Dark One has some potential influence or something. Like, Machin Shin's bad, so it's not going to go after someone that is also bad, I assume. I have no idea.
Well, we know that the Trollocs and Fades are terrified of it and that it does devour them. I have the sense that it's following Rand's party, that it is
Okay.
tracking them in the overworld, sort of, like, and I think that's why it's been right there and waiting every time. I think it's following them around. And to me, this was, I took this as, oh, it can't be multiple places at once necessarily, and it is following Rand's group around the world at the moment and waiting for them when they come through the gate. Also because it can move much faster than them in the ways than in the world. But but that doesn't necessarily preclude that the Dark One has some influence over it, other than that we do know that it does eat dark friends and shadow spawn.
Right. And then Liandrin said, I wrote down something really vague. I think she was talking about, what the hell was she talking about? I wrote, what does Liandrin know about it? Where did she take them? So we know where she took them, but what does Liandrin know about it? I think was that she made some kind of comment about, like, I know things that Moraine doesn't know.
Yeah.
Because they were questioning her about something with the Waygate, how it was going to be a problem. And she was like, well, I know things she doesn't know. And I think that was her saying she can do something to Machin Shin.
Well, she could also navigate the ways, which Moraine couldn't, right? Like, Loyal had to navigate.
Right. She's got some
before.
kind of, like, document that she's looking at.
Yeah, and clearly the ones waiting on the other, like Lady Suroth, I think it's pretty explicit that she is also a Dark Friend, and that the Dark One has power among the Shan as well as among the Aes Sedai.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, here it is. Egwene is talking, and she said, yeah, they're talking about the Black Wind. Moraine Sedai said it could not be killed or even hurt very much. And then Liandrin says if the Black Wind appears, I will deal with it.
Mm.
Marine does not know as much as she thinks. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe she does have a way of harming it or warding it off.
Yeah. Okay, so I assume that they'll talk more about that, because then I was even thinking, she says to them, well, like, oh, there's a black Aja walking around the tower, like in the tower. And I was thinking, like, why are you telling these teenage girls? Like, if you were actually not a black Aja, wouldn't you do something about that? Or like tell someone that's not these just random teenage girls? But yeah, she's not lying if she is the black Aja.
Yeah. And if there's more than her, I kind of assumed it was the plural, that because the Dark One has claimed that in several points in this book, I think so far, that he has sisters among the Aes Sedai.
So they show up, and it's obviously like an ambush because they're all right there. I thought it was interesting that Rena is talking about how an Aes Sedai created the leashes and the chains and stuff.
We get a little short story there about the origin of the Idom.
Yeah, and it was kind of confusing to track the different terms for the ones that wear the chains, the ones that control the chains, and then there were other words for like people that there's like some other word for for unchained channelers, Marath domain they call them, or Marath Damane. Yeah, so it was kind of difficult to follow that. But then also like so fucked up that she was talking about how sometimes they'll put the chains and the harness thingy like on men just to see what happens.
Oh yeah.
Like just to fuck with them.
For the Empress's entertainment.
Yeah. So who is Suroth in regards to, is it Turok?
Yeah, High Lord Turok.
Yeah.
Do we know, is she a High Lady? Do they call her that, or just a lady? She is a High Lady.
It is High Lady
of the Blood. So I guess she's of equal standing to him. I get the sense that they are the highest ranking leaders of the invasion here, currently on the continent. Like I don't think there's anybody higher than Suroth or Turok in that until you get back to Shan-Chan itself in the Empire.
Okay. Yeah, it just in the back it just says Shan-Chan, a noble woman of high degree, but I didn't know, is that like her brother? Are they married? Like,
oh, good question. Yeah.
What is it? Where is it here? High Lord literally says the same thing. Shan-Chan of high degree. High Lord of House Aladon. But then, so what's the blood part? Because they kept saying blood with like a capital B.
The like the same way that British royalty would use it. They're supposed to be all of the royal blood, the noble blood of Arthur Hawkwing, so they're like anybody except that you don't have to literally be of the blood, because you can be raised to the blood. We know from earlier chapters of I'm forgetting her name, who captures Bail Doman, the sailor, talks about how this is like her chance to get raised to the blood for her service in this war. So it is possible to be made nobility and to be given a title. But yeah, they're treated and they're so up, their class is so far above the rest that like we see here Suroth's own people, like she'll just talk about obliquely, but she'll just talk about serving Balsamon in front of them, not naming him, but talk with Liandrin, and knows that none of them are gonna betray her or talk back or do anything about it, or like they're just which is interesting, because earlier now that I'm thinking about it, with Lord Turok, he was talking about how not even in private in his own house would he ever say a word against the Empress, because the seekers or the listeners are everywhere, whichever they're called, that anyone in Shan-Chan could be one of the Empress's ears and might not actually be loyal to you directly, but they might be like, secretly one of the Empress's spies. So I don't know what Lady Suroth knows, or how she is able to know that like all 50 of the people she has here are not one of those, or unless that is, I didn't think about this till this moment, that unless that implies something about just how high up the Dark One's hold goes in the Shan-Chan. I don't know. But it is wild kind of that she's just able to discuss this in front of them. And they're not going to question it. That's not their place. They're not of the blood. Rena wouldn't even think about questioning Lady Suroth's orders.
So then the ones that hold the leash, can they also channel?
That is not mentioned. It's presumably you would think not, because why are they not themselves leashed then in that case? But they do mention like that there are way more Suldam, the ones who can hold the leashes, than there are Damane, the leashed one, the channelers that they catch and chain. But it's a good question about like, well, not every woman can do this. Like how are some able to? Why is it that being chained to certain men makes them both die if that happens? It raises a lot of questions right away, right here.
Yeah, because they said to Egwene, like, well, maybe you'll be the kind that can make the Adam, the actual devices. Yeah. But then I'm looking up in the book, and it says the Soldam is a woman who has passed the test to show that she can wear the bracelet and thus control a Dama. So, but they haven't explained what those tests are, have they?
No, not yet.
Anyone? Yeah, just a device can be worn to control against her will any woman who can channel. So I assume that they're going to go into the testing process and all of that to explain more of that. Because the chains, I guess, act as like a conduit, because she was saying like, oh well, anything that you do to me or that happens to me will happen to you, like twice over.
Only twice as bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, but then is Min currently chained?
I don't think, like, if she is, it's conventional chains. I think they know that she can't channel. They sort of say that in here because, so there'd be no point in putting a collar on her because there's this argument between Liandrin and Saroth, and Saroth is like, you were supposed to bring 2 channelers and now I only have 1. And Liandrin's like, well, that's not my fault. I brought you 3 or 4, whatever it was. 4, right? Egwene, no, 3. Egwene, Elayne, and Nynaeve. And it's not my fault that you let 2 of them get off into the. So I think they're sort of taking Min prisoner as a guarantee that Egwene will cooperate and be a good Damane in this like really demeaning way that they treat them like animals. It's just immediately skin crawling for me. I don't know if there's something particularly that gets to me in any story involving enslavement and torture in this way, and just the demeaning of that sense, like taking another person, treating them in this way, that attempting to break their will kind of thing. It really gets to me, like under my skin. So it's an effective passage for me in that way, and I know I'm only going to get angrier the more the more chapters we get with this going on.
Yeah, and I think it says her hand stroked Egwene's hair, mistress soothing her dog. So like they're making it very clear that like that's what they're trying to do. Okay, I figured out why I was confused about Min. So there's one point where Egwene is like talking back, I guess, to Rena, and she starts freaking out. And then it says dimly she was aware of Min shouting angrily and trying to ride to her side. And then it says of another Soldam speaking sharply to her Damane or whatever, who looked at Min, and then Min was yelling too, arms flapping as if trying to ward off blows. That's what I was confused about. I missed the part where it says that someone else was making their slave woman, I guess, use the power against her.
Yeah, there's so many things going on, and it's like we only have implications that even the story does that writer thing where when the ambush is first triggered, it's like a great many things happened at exactly the same time, and here now the narrator's going to try to lay out for you all the things, because there's so much happening physically simultaneously that this is one of those scenes I think that will probably be way clearer and easier to parse on screen, because it'll happen. You can just have the camera show you each of these things, and it'll all happen very quickly. Because there is a lot going on, and we're learning so much all at once about the way that the Shan do this here.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to kind of understand what happened. So it was like Nynaeve, as they came out of the Waygate, then I guess Nynaeve realized that like they were fucked, and so she started kind of freaking out. And then at some point something happens. I didn't know if it was like a lightning strike or something that separated the 4 from each other, with Min and Egwene on this side, and then Elayne and Nynaeve able to get away. And then I think a couple of the people that were waiting for them were killed.
Yeah, I think Nynaeve kills a whole bunch of the soldiers coming after her, and they eventually give up the chase because they lose her in the woods. Because it's Nynaeve, we know she's really good at getting around in the woods, and she's like hurling wind, knocking trees over, throwing lightning bolts down. And I think she's fighting off 2 of the Damane chasing them as well, like the chained channelers. Maybe it's only 1, but I think it's 2 Damane and 2 Uldam going after her. Yeah, they get separated. It happens really quickly, and I didn't have like a very crystal clear mental picture of how they got separated, other than that they did in the chaos.
Yeah, so I didn't know if it was like they walked out and like two went on like Liandrin's left side and two went on her right side or something. Because then Elayne says like, oh, well, they were right behind me. They almost got me, but then they let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I guess we're supposed to assume that the Dark One only cares about Egwene and Nynaeve, not about anyone else.
Which could, I mean, that comes into a lot of things. Like it could be, I was trying to think, is it because of they're in that sphere of influence? He knows them, and Egwene has been encountering him in her dreams. Is it because they're also Verin as well? Is it because they're tangled up in the Verin web of the Three Two Rivers boys? And I don't think any of that is clear here. I think the show's answer is going to just make it simpler that they are the Verin who are also the dragon candidates. If they're still going to leave that ambiguous in season 2, I'm not sure. But I'm also not sure here exactly what the Dark One's interest is in them. Beyond that, they've been tied up in all these big events so far.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was just because those two are supposed to be Verin and not, as of right now, we don't really know anything about Elayne or her actual capabilities or anything because, like you said, it was just like, oh, like Egwene bumped into her, smash cut to now they're besties, and there's like no dialogue. Yeah, and so it feels I this is not something that I really felt up until like this point in this book, is that now the pacing feels kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because we focus so heavily on different characters at different points, and it's like, where did they go? Like, there's only a couple chapters left, and we haven't seen Selene in a while, and we don't know what Tom's doing, and there was such like this huge thing about, oh, well, we have to get to the White Tower, we have to do all that, and then it's like,
yeah.
Okay, well, we were there, now we don't really care about it, and we haven't heard from Moraine in a while, and Liandrin was supposed to be going after Moraine, and all of a sudden she's back. So did she find where Moraine went and came back, or did she give up and come back?
Where did we left Moraine off with the Draghkar attack, right?
Yeah, she was in like the village with the two older Aes Sedai.
Yeah, and we haven't seen her since, and do we know where she was going after that?
I don't remember.
It has been a while. Yeah,
because wasn't she looking? They had like a book or something that she was supposed to be looking for.
She was looking for that critical information. That was chapter 20. Watcher. Now I'm like flipping back. Did we get a sense of where she is
They're
now?
hiding out. They're in the borderlands.
She said, "I fear I must leave you. Land, will you ready the horses? I will leave letters with you to be sent on to the White Tower if you arrange it. And where will you find your will you find your answers where you are going?" Von Dane asked. And Moraine replies, "I may already have found one. I did not know I saw it. I only hope I'm not too late. I will need pen and parchment." Yeah, so we have no clue, I think, where she is going or has gone at this point.
I have a hard time because there's not really like timestamps on any of the chapters. So my brain reads them all as like one after the other. That like, just be like Moraine is here with these people, not necessarily at the same time that Liandrin's on her way back, or that like, they're being pulled through the way gates or anything. Like, I don't know in connection to everyone else when things are happening. A lot of it has to be happening kind of at the same time, because the time span of the books is only like 3 years, something really short we looked up.
And now we have this 4-month gap to account for that I really don't know where that fits in at all into this, like, all these timelines jutting up against each other.
Yeah, and so the 4-month gap was also interesting because I was like, okay, well, what has Padan Fain been doing? Like, did he anticipate that, like, it could take Rand, like, 8 months to eventually get, so he's just hanging out? Like, so what has he been doing this whole time?
Good question. And we don't, like you said, we don't have many chapters left to find out. I have the sneaking suspicion, and I truly don't remember, but I have the sneaking suspicion that this book will end on a cliffhanger to be resolved in The Dragon Reborn. I cannot see how they could possibly wind up a real conclusion to an arc here. I feel like it's going to be real middle book of a trilogy syndrome, like real, like, no, keep reading on to find out where all this is going. I'm sure we'll have something climactic, but I doubt it's going to resolve even a fraction of our questions or where all the other characters are, what Moraine's up to, what Tom's up to. I don't know if we're going to have time unless they all show up at Toman's Head as well.
That's why I was just looking to see, like, okay, when were these books published? Like, how much of a cliffhanger did he have to end on in order to keep people interested? And it looks like the first book, Eye of the World, was published on January 15th, 1990. The second book, November 15th, 1990. But then the third book,
wow. Really
not
fast.
until October 15th, 1991. So people had to wait almost a year then for the third book. So if I'm going to stay involved in a book series, you're going to have to end on a cliffhanger. But I'm also hoping that like he's going to not necessarily wrap stuff up by the end of the book because there are only a few chapters, but at least bring more people kind of together or like push their storyline along because there's been so many characters. It's like, so yeah, like what's happening with Celine? We need Moraine again. We need, is it Bail Doman? The ship guy? Yeah, we need him. We need Tom. It's like, otherwise, what was the point?
Bail is presumably, he's also still at Falme, right? Or wait, is it?
Is he in Tolman Head or was he at Falme?
Or Tolman Head. Yeah. I forgot those are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rand, where do they come? Do they arrive at Tolman Head? Oh no, wait. Oh no. Is Falme a town in Tolman Head? Actually, is that the gist of it?
Might be.
Is Tolman Head the peninsula? Pulling up the Wheel of Time map.
Yeah, pulling up the map.
Yeah. I think that might be the case. I think they are the same general area. Yes. Okay. So Tolman Head is the peninsula nation that's kind of a loose collection of lordships that are now invaded by the Shanshan. And Falme is the southwesternmost port town.
Oh, there it is.
On Tolman Head. Yeah. So that's why I got a little. Yes. Everybody's in Tolman Head now, I think. And the question is how close they all are to Falme. And I don't think Rand's group is in Falme itself yet, but they came out in Tolman Head, I think. Let's see if that chapter 37. Where did they emerge?
That's interesting though, looking at the map, because like Emond's Field, I mean, I'm sure it's like really far, but it looks like it's not that far from the Almoth Plain. So they had to go all the way over east to Tar Valon just to come all the way back over to the west to the very edge to get to Tolman Head.
Although there are like the big mountains of mist in between them there. I think that is like 1,000 miles or something. I think it's pretty far because I want to say this continent is larger than continental Europe, if I remember correctly, or similar in scope at least, which would mean maybe if looking at that, if we're treating like Tolman Head as Portugal, and the Iberian Peninsula, like Nick was saying before, then Two Rivers is maybe, I don't know, like Germany, the distance away from there, or maybe France, which is still pretty far if you're going on foot or horseback, and you have a huge mountain range in between you. And then, like you said, they were all the way over much farther. Oh yeah, and if you look how far Shinar is to the northeast, and Cayenne, because they were on the eastern side. Yeah, they were basically on the eastern side of the continent, going to the far west side. Rand's group.
So that's what, like, because then it said, Liandrin was told to get Egwene and Nynaeve chained and taken to the other side of the Aerith Ocean. So is this supposed to be like the whole map of this entire universe, or just this one area?
Just this continent. We don't even see the Aiel Waste on this map because they're east of the spine of the world. So you can't see any of Aiel land here, and we don't see any of Shanshan because they didn't even know Shanshan existed. They just knew that Arthur Hawkwing's son in the legend went across the sea in retreat supposedly. So Shanshan's not shown here. No idea how big that is compared to the continent. Right. And I think the Aiel Wastes are almost as big as the whole continent here, east of the spine of the world, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's just weird looking at, because like, you know, here's Emond's Field, and then they ended up they were in Camelin, and then they were in Tar Valon. At one point they were in Shinar, and then they went down to Carhane, and then now they're going over. So that's why I was wondering, like, instead of going back west across the entire continent, did they loop around? But I guess they would have to go west using the...
So, oh shoot, before you look at what I just put in chat, let me remove the preview because I didn't want a preview on there. I posted make this message a spoiler. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I put it as a spoiler. But if you want, I just posted somebody's map rendering of the entire world, the Wheel of Time world, to give perspective on here is that the continent is not even close to a big part of the world.
Okay.
Yeah, that it looks based on this like, sort of the scale that Europe is relative to the rest of the globe. Maybe a little more than that because there's more ocean in this world.
Okay. Huh.
Well, do we have any final thoughts on this set of chapters before we call it for the episode?
Not really. I think we've covered almost everything. Just like excited to be almost like done with this book. Not because like I'm hating it. I've enjoyed this one more than Eye of the World, but it's just like accomplishing 2 massive books from my bookshelf feels great. So, being able to get into the third one and be like more into this universe. It's like, I might strongly dislike some of the characters, but I'm still, I'm still invested in the story. I want to know what's happening with all of them. So, I'm just interested to see like, where's he going to take all these characters?
Same. Yeah. I am once again finding it hard not to listen to the next set of, or read on to the next set of chapters each week. I'm often doing it on my audiobook now, and I have to make myself stop at the 40 between 41 gap there, just so I have them fresh in mind each week. Luckily, like I probably not as many as you, but I do have a couple other books that I'm reading at the same time, so I can jump over to one of. Although this is certainly the most page turnery, I think. Well, if you're reading along, audience, next time we will be reading chapters 41 to 45 of The Great Hunt. That, I believe, will be our second to last set of chapters. We only have 10 left to go. There are exactly 50 in this book. This episode of Wattcast was produced by yours truly. As always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Caleb Wimble. Keeley, where can people find you?
On Twitter and Instagram at Keeley_Reeve.
Remember, you can always find us at wattcast.net, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Wattcast Podcast to keep up to date on the new episodes. And you can support the show at patreon.com/Wattcast. Your support means a lot, which you can also do money-free by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or your podcast platform of choice. This helps so much, especially if you leave a written review, even just a few words. That is a huge boost on the algorithm, the number 2 way we find new listeners. The number 1 way, of course, is to tell a friend about the show. Word of mouth really does make a difference. That's all for today, though. Thanks so much for listening, folks. And remember, this is not the ending. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but this is an ending. Farewell.